get going in here. Thank you. Just very quickly, just some reminders. We've done this quite a bit before, but we do know we have some new people joining us this today. Just as Stephanie had mentioned, all sessions are going to be recorded and all the resources will be made available. We hope to have those up within the next week. As any of you know, we have over 30 some sessions that we have on the menu today, and that will take us some time to get those uploaded into YouTube, but we will get those. Everything will be linked in the session catalog. So the same document that you're using to get to your sessions today will include all of those resources and materials. I'll send an email out via Unified Talent to let you know when those are all posted and ready for you to review. You are able, if you need closed captioning, please feel free to turn that on. That is something that is independent. We have those directions. I sent them out via Unified Talent the other day. We'll be dropping those in the chats for you as well, but know that you have that available to you. We will be using a Google form for attendance, so there will be one at the end of every session. So please make sure that you look out for those when they get dropped into the chat. If you are interested, we do have an optional note catcher. If you are going to use this, make sure we're going to drop that link in the chat here in just a second. But please open Wixie first from ClassLink before selecting the link, and then you'll be able to get your own copy. If you choose to use the note catcher, there will be the option to turn that into us at the end of the day via the final evaluation Google form. And you can get some extra swag from us. I'm going to tell you, we've got some nice stuff to send out this time. So feel free to use that if you want. Thank you, Sam. That's now in the chat for you. And then, of course, the most important part of the day is lunch. We did give you an hour-long lunch today, and so that's going to be from 11:30 to 12:30. So definitely, it's supposed to be a beautiful day, I think. So get out there, stretch your legs a little bit, make sure that you are ready to go. So with that, I'm going to actually turn this over to our keynote speakers. So thank you, Ms. Walker and Dr. Jones, for joining us today. They are with the Office of Professional Growth and Development here, and they're going to spend the next 50 minutes with us here talking about adult learning and the differences between presenting, training, and facilitating. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to turn it over to them. All right, ladies, it is all you.
Thank you, Carrie. And it's just taking a minute to get everything queued up.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you. My name is Dania Walker. I'm a teacher specialist in the Office of Professional Growth and Development. And my dear colleague,
Natalie Jones. Nice to meet you all.
So we're really excited to be with you. We see several familiar faces from other professional developments we've done throughout the county. So we're really excited to be with you today as each coaches during this professional learning session. Today, we are providing the keynote as adult learning, present, train, and facilitate. We know in your role as e-coaches, you are providing a variety of professional development when it's either one-on-one, small group, or with your entire staff. So we are really excited to bring to you today this keynote to discuss working with adult learners. In the chat, Natalie just dropped was getting ready to drop a link for a document that has all of the resources that we're going to use throughout our keynote. We will also upload information and resources in the Google Drive that Carrie is providing to us that you will receive, I believe, at the end of the session. So if there's anything that you see today that we are doing during our keynote, you will have access to it, okay? So please don't worry. So our outcomes for our keynote, we really want to discuss when, why, and how to determine the best time to use presenting, facilitating, training, learning methods with students and adults. We're really going to focus on the adult learner during this 50 minutes together, but you're going to hear ideas that you have probably already used with your students. What we really want to think about when we're planning and implementing professional development, how do we put the adults in the forefront? So this is our agenda. We can put a check mark by outcomes, right? We just got that done. I'm going to walk you through the beginnings, the opening components of professional development. either doing a getting center or a colleague connection task and what that can look like. Then I'm going to also walk you through the principles of andragogy, and that correlates with the resource article you already received. Dr. Jones is going to walk you through 3 different learning modalities: presenting, training, and facilitating, and then we will close out. So we are planning professional learning. We really want to think about how we want to open our professional learning sessions, regardless of the number of people, if it's one-on-one, small group, or your entire staff. We really want to be intentional with how we plan that opening task. So there's 2 options. You can do a colleague connection, which is an opening task to build connections with participants, also building trust and communication. We want to provide tasks that are low stakes communication, right? You really want to think about that lessening anxiety within the room with the presenters and the participants, and then participants with each other, right? So when they're working on technology, they may want to ask a colleague a question. So you really want to build that comfortable level. You want participants to also take risk. So when we have a colleague connection, it really is less about the content in that moment, but really about creating relationships and having some communication. Getting centered opening tasks is very different. You really want to provide a professional development hook that aligns with the content that you are sharing. We really want to set the intentions. So we're going to look at an example of both a colleague connection and a getting centered task. Setting intentions is really helpful because it taps into andragogy, and I'm going to define that for you in a few minutes. Asking participants to set their intention really allows the participant to think about, what do I want to get out of the learning? What is my reason for being in this session? And they can write that down, and that can be theirs, right? They're setting their intention. They are owning the learning. That is a big difference with the adult learner compared to children that we work with every day. So let's look at some examples. So this is called soup, salad, or sandwich. I'm not sure if you've done this before in your class with students, but we're going to think about it in the aspect of adults. And I want to know how you would classify these food items and why. So this is a colleague connection. It's low risk, right? Who doesn't like food? Who doesn't like to talk about food, right? So it's something that's low risk. You get to provide the option. You only have 3 options: soup, salad, or sandwich. And you determine how you want to classify those items and give the reason why. So we have chicken Alfredo, a smoothie, and mozzarella sticks. So we think about chicken Alfredo. Someone may say, oh, I think it's a soup. There's a lot of sauce on it. I like to maybe drink the Alfredo sauce at the end, right? I think it's a soup. Someone else may say, no, it's a salad. I put broccoli inside of my chicken Alfredo. That's a vegetable. It's a salad. Someone else may say, no, chicken Alfredo is a sandwich. I like to use garlic bread, and so I consider it to be a sandwich, right? So there's no wrong answers. Also really fun to do with kids and hear their responses as well. But with the adult learner as a colleague connection, again, it's low risk. There's no wrong answers. People can talk and share their perspective. Someone else may say, I don't eat chicken Alfredo at all, right? So they get a chance to learn about one another. That colleague connection is really about lessening the anxiety, right? We think about different levels of tech, right? Our different levels of learners, but getting them a chance to take risk and communicate with one another, okay? So this is just a quick activity that's an example of a colleague connection. Let's look at a getting centered task, and this is a task we're actually going to complete together. So emoji madness, you may have already done this activity either during the pandemic when we were switching off or throughout your learning. This is an example of getting centered. It is aligned to the professional development. It is aligned to the content. So emoji madness says choose an emoji that represents and connects with adult learners, student achievement, or professional development. So now I'm having my participants think about the content. So I'm activating prior knowledge, right? So a different shift from colleague connection to a getting centered task. So I would like to take a moment and have you just place in the chat an emoji that represents either adult learning, student achievement, or professional development. And I am not that tech savvy, so we're doing it in the chat, but I am going to be a Nearpod champion soon. So hand claps, I see that. Sunglasses, balloons, cloud storms, tools, books, absolutely. Graduation cap, that's a great one. Fire, right? Absolutely. Stars, hearts. And if there's anyone who's brave enough to maybe use the hand raise tool and just share, is there anyone who wouldn't mind just sharing your reasoning behind it? Behind your emoji choice? Thank you, Jill.
Hi, good morning. I did the emoji with the staff member rolling their eyes, or the smiley rolling their eyes, just because there are some staff members where you can hear them grumbling on the way to the training. Oh, we got another meeting, blah, blah, blah. So it's just breaking through that crusty layer of what people perceive when they're getting ready to go to a training, and, really getting them with the hook and getting them energized and ready to go. And willing to be accepting of either a refresher or some new learning.
Jill, actually, that is wonderful because you're absolutely right that sometimes we may have a little bit of resistance, right? So we can think about how we view the resistance, and then this getting centered sometimes with a staff member who may be reluctant in the beginning, having them set the intention, right? Put the learning back on the adult learner, right? Because in a moment, we're going to talk about principles of andragogy, and they need to know the reason why, and they have to direct their own learning. So push it back on them, right? That's the difference with adults. Absolutely. Thank you, Jill. So if you notice that the Getting Centered task, Emoji Madness, is very different, right? Related to the content. We're going to talk about the principles of andragogy. OIT was kind enough to share an article for us to you, so we really appreciate that. And we just want to give you a little bit of background about andragogy, because we're really giving you a little appetizer, a little taste of this, but we wanted to start that learning. So when we think about andragogy, it is really the art and science of helping adults in their learning. Pedagogy is very different. Pedagogy is the art and science of teaching children, right? We build the foundation for children. We do not build the foundation for adults. They already come in with experiences. So we are there to support the adult within the learning through andragogy. Okay, very big difference. So let's walk through a few of the principles of andragogy. So Malcolm Knowles created these principles of andragogy. Number one is self-concept. Adult learners start from really not knowing and being very dependent in their learning to self-directed. So think about the article we provided you. That is to begin that self-directed learning, right? You may have come in the session not knowing anything about andragogy. Now you may continue to move forward and learn more. Adult learners, number two, also come with experiences. We all have our own personal and professional experiences. We bring that to all professional learning sessions to determine, number three, our readiness to learn. What skill do I want to choose to take away from your session? What knowledge do I want to take away as well in order to be ready to learn for either a personal or professional goal that I'm moving forward into? Number four, problem-centered learning. Adults want to learn skills they can use immediately. Think about all the times you hear adults say, well, I can't use it, right? We've done it too. I know I have, but it was good, but I can't use that right now. They really want to learn skills they can place into their lives professionally and personally immediately to solve a problem. Internal motivation. As adults, we really want to achieve different things internally, right? So we're learning based on that. And that doesn't mean we don't like a little external, little cash, right? Not saying that, but we are motivated internally based on our goals and the problem we would like to address. And then number six, the need to know. Really want to understand why. Why are we learning this information? How will this application help me? How will this application help me work with students in my classroom? How will this assist and maybe lessen my workload, right? So you use your agenda and your outcomes to create that need to know, okay? I have talked a little bit about andragogy that is provided in all of the professional learning that we do. Dr. Jones is going to move us into the 3 different learning modalities.
Thank you, Dania. And again, this image that you see on your screen is in the folder that we provided for you. I'll just drop that link in the chat again in case you didn't have an opportunity to access it. So I love what Dania said. She said a lot of great stuff, but I'm going to begin with this, that the adults come in with experience. And so I believe that is also true for what I'm about to share with you. So we have the fact that some of our PD could be classified as a presentation, while others, and Jill just actually used the term training. And the third column, the third learning modality or learning method is facilitation. The reason why we're taking the opportunity to make sure that we have a very clear understanding of the differences among these 3 modalities is because what happens more often than not, one of 2 things. Either people tend to use these terms interchangeably, especially presentation and facilitation. Very few people really get trainings confused with presentation or facilitation. So either those 2 terms are used interchangeably, or sometimes they are just used just like incorrectly. You're saying one, but what you're actually engaged in is the other. And I'll give you a very good example of that in a minute. So let's take a look at our blue column, our presentation. When you look at these 3 different modalities, as you see here on the far left, there are 4 ways in which they are very distinct from each other. And so when you think about planning for your next adult learning experience, again, like Dania said, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's small group, or whether it's with a much larger group, you have to ask yourself, what is the point? What is the focus of my experience that you're going to craft for the adult learner? So let's take a look again at the presentation. So if your focus is really on the content, if your focus is really getting that out there. So if we use what Dania just did in the beginning, everything she just set up for you was all about her being that presenter. There was some very clear information that she wanted to make sure that she gave to you. So her focus is on the content. How did she deliver it? That was the information piece. And then she also tried to inspire you when she talked about, the getting centered versus the community connection. But that deliverable is all about she's in possession of information that she believes that the adult participants need to receive, be the recipient. And so her approach, she told you a lot, she presented, it was just straightforward. Who did most of the telling? She did. That's 80%. That's why she did all that talking. And then the 20% is her listening. She did open it up some. She asked you to engage with her. She asked you to use some of the tech tools that's embedded in Google Meet. And she also asked one person to take themselves off of mute and to respond to a question. So 80% of that for her was telling. 20% of that for her was listening. The reverse is true. 80% for you was listening. That's what happens during presentation. You're really about listening, taking in what that presenter is giving you. And then for you, 20% is perhaps the presenter opening up an opportunity for you then to engage with them or to engage with the actual content. That's what it means to present. What I also wrote here is that this is what people mean when they say sage on a stage or sit and get. And I want to say this, there isn't anything inherently wrong with sit and get if your focus is very clear. If your focus is on the content, if your focus is just getting people that information, that real quick down and dirty, a presentation learning modality makes the most sense. So it's all about your goal. It's all about your deliverable, and that's going to determine the appropriate learning modality. So I don't want you to leave thinking that there is never an opportunity for so-called sit and get. You want to make a very conscious, deliberate decision about that focus. And if your focus is getting that information out there, focus is on the content, then you would most likely choose that presentation modality. So that's our blue column. Let's shift all the way over to our facilitation in the green. So again, if we think about the focus, if your focus is really about that process of the learning, Now you're going to stand back from being necessarily that sage on a stage, because it's really about what everyone else brings to the situation. You don't have to be that sage on stage. You might not even possess all of the answers, but what you will do is frame that learning. You want to give people opportunity to do research, to pose questions, to interact with each other. That's what it looks like as far as your deliverable. That's what your approach looks like. You're really guiding that learning. So opposed to you having that 80% of you telling, 80% is you listening. Who are you listening to? You're listening to the participants. What is it all that they understand? What is it that they're bringing in? And you are also in that process of learning as well. So that telling piece is just the flip. You're only 20%. That's you perhaps asking questions. That's you guiding. But you don't necessarily have to have the answers. That's the point of we're all kind of working together. That's a big difference between facilitation and presentation. And let me give you a very good example of what that can look like when it's done incorrectly. So my daughter is a senior at Micah. She signed up for this one particular class, and they basically said it was going to be about facilitation, that the kids were going to be able to get in there and have hands-on and do a lot of work. What it turned out to be was a presentation. And why do I know? Because college kids will complain. So she came home, and then one of the first things she complained about, she said, I signed up for this class because I wanted to have this particular modality. If I wanted a teacher lecture presentation, I would have signed up for that. And so what happened was, it wasn't that she couldn't learn from that person. She could, but she was very disappointed because the modality that she was expecting, and that was her preference, she did not receive because the professor chose to go with the modality that she wanted and that she was comfortable with. So that's another reason why it's important for you to understand the distinction here. Because when your participants understand a distinction, they come in with a certain perspective. They come in with a certain expectation. And when you fail to deliver that, it's not that they didn't learn, but they might be disappointed. They might even be a little bit angry, and you might have a bit of resistance because how you are presenting it, how you have framed it, doesn't meet the expectation. So those are, let's say, our two extreme type of modalities, far as the opposite sides of each other. And then right there in the middle, which is the one that Jill mentioned, was the training. And so in the training, that's that kind of like a nice in-between piece. Again, that focus is on a combination of the content, but then also you want to give them that opportunity to kind of go through the process to practice. What is the deliverable? Ultimately, it's all about building people's skills, and you guys do that a lot. So that teacher involvement is critical. So far as you, it's 50% you're telling, 50% you're really listening, meaning the other 50% the people actually engage. So that training piece is a nice combination of perhaps the extreme of presentation and facilitation. The last piece I would like to share about this is that as you plan for your professional learning experience and you're thinking about which learning modality makes the most sense for your goal, understand this. You can move from one learning modality based on what it is that you want to achieve. And then when you move into another piece, that learning modality might change. So you might start off, for example, in a presentation mode because there's information that you really want them to have to prepare them for what? Perhaps a training, or to prepare them to engage in more of a facilitative type of nature. So I want to say that I don't want you to believe that one learning experience must only include one of the learning modalities. That isn't true. Again, we're all about being purposeful about our why. So if your why changes at a certain point in your learning experience, your professional learning planning, then you need to shift the learning modality that best fits that particular piece. So that's the part that we want you to really understand and being very purposeful. You guys have any questions or comments about that? You're welcome to unmute yourselves before we move to the next piece. Absolutely. Sometimes time does. And so typically, if you're limited with time, you're going to fall into your presentation mode. And again, that is also fine, but you need to be really clear and transparent that you're presenting. Don't say you're limited for time and then make it something else. Be honest with whatever it is, and then allow people to understand that we're doing presentation because of this. So, or if you can't go as deep, you want to make that clear as well. We're all about transparency. So whatever it is that you're doing, I would say explain it to your participants. It's always good. And that's another thing as far as what Dania said about andragogy. The adults want to understand the why behind it, that metacognition. And so being transparent will really help them. And it's really just good for buy-in. They understand that. They understand your motivation and the decisions that you made. You don't have to keep it a secret from people. You're working with them. You're trying to help to support them, to grow them in any way. So yeah, so you want to explain that to them in a way that they will understand. It will help them be more involved and engaged and accepting of whatever it is that you're doing. So, and I'm reading the comments as I see them as well. So right, like you said, just like kids, right? So everything, we want you to be really conscious and deliberate about your time and be purposeful. So what we would like for you to do is to think about the learning modality that you typically engage. Now, we don't know, and so it's really about your individual practice. Do you typically create presentations? Are you more in a training mode, which is what Jill mentioned, or do you normally engage in facilitation? Put that in your head. And this is the reason why. If you take a look in what we provided for you, you will see that there are 3 checklists, and they're a checklist labeled for each of the learning modalities. We want you to, again, to choose the one that you engage in most often. Click that. It should force you to make a copy. I'm just going to give you a minute to do that. Choose the learning modality that you typically engage. Click on the link and make yourself a copy, and it will give you a Google Doc, which you can edit and interact with. And so what I would like for you to do, what we are requesting for you to do, is to think about your current practice, how you plan, how you implement, what you bring to the situation. And I want you to engage in a self-assessment. That's your checklist. Check off all the ones that you do. And this is the standard. Not simply that you do it, but that it is effective. Because we do a lot of stuff and we don't do it effectively. So don't just give yourself credit like, oh yeah, I do, feedback forms, but you don't really do it well. You're not really phrasing the questions the way they should to get at the heart of it. So the checklist, give yourself a check if it's something there that you do and you do well. Give yourself credit for that. Dania's going to start the timer and you're going to have 5 minutes. All right. Wonderful. Thank you, Dania. Okay, so I hope everyone had the opportunity to complete your person selected checklist. What I ask you to do is take a look at the boxes that you did not check. And I am asking you to select 3 of those skills or practices that you're going to say, man, if I work on these immediately, it's going to really enhance my practice. It's going to benefit the adults with whom I work. So highlight, underline, change the color of, but start off with 3. 3 is typically manageable. Start off with 3 skills, knowledge, practices that you're saying, I don't really do it all, or I don't do well. But if I change my practice, it's going to increase the effectiveness of my work with adult learners that much more. So go ahead and take a minute to do that, please. Okay. So I'm hoping everyone had opportunity to do so. And what we're going to do is Dania is going to put everyone in a breakout room. And this is the simple ask. We're going to give you about 5 minutes. Of those 3 that you just selected, we're asking you just to choose one. And when you get into your group, go ahead, introduce yourself if you don't know each other. And each person will take 1 minute to share the skill, the practice, whichever one that you want to share. Share that, and maybe share, like, what, maybe perhaps why you chose it and what you hope to achieve when you start really using it in your next professional development. This is about active listening. That first go round, everyone has a minute. We want to make sure that we aren't shortchanging that very last person. So be mindful of not really speaking more than past the minute. And then once everyone has had an opportunity to have their voice heard and to be listened to, if there's remaining time, then you can engage in an actual conversation. But I want to make sure that you have a chance to share your selection and your why. Are we ready? And so Dania's going to create the groups. Perfect. All right, welcome back, everyone. So before we start to draw this to a close, what I will ask for you to do, and I'm just typing it in the chat, and I'll ask maybe a couple of people to come off mute if they would like to answer. So when you took your self-assessment, were there any surprises, confirmations, or concerns? And again, if I will, hopefully a couple of people wouldn't mind sharing. Are there something that was a confirmation, a surprise, or a concern? Again, if you wouldn't mind coming off a mute to share. Yes, Shayla.
I think I was just discussing in my group about how I would like to get better at being able to facilitate where I'm not always getting stuck with a person that's maybe slower on adapting. And someone, Tracy, brought up that you also have the person that'll always be ahead of you on the agenda. You have an agenda and they always come with their own agenda, and kind of being able to balance that when you're the facilitator. That's something I would like to improve on.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Someone else, a confirmation, a surprise, or maybe a concern for your self-assessment. Christiana, yes.
Good morning, everybody. I found it wasn't much of a surprise to me, but I do enjoy training more where we can have more of that 50-50 where I, talk about something, then we immediately go ahead and try to implement or demonstrate, and we have that hands-on. And so I kind of get a little, I won't say upset, but I guess a little bit off when I have to sit through when we call things PDs and then they're just people talking at us versus having that moment to interact and, actually put something into motion that we can take right away. We were talking about in small group, trying to just be conscious of the different learning styles and then just getting in and out, like giving them something tangible to go back and use, whether for their self or for the classroom right away.
Absolutely. Thank you. And that was a great point as far as people's expectations and whoever's before the adults, them having an understanding of whether they're presenting, training, or facilitating. And sometimes it is just just get in there, you just give me the information, and then I'm on my way. So setting those expectations. And the final piece, and before Dania comes back on to pull everything to a close, I would suggest, because at some point, if you haven't already, we're going to do all three. Correct? When you're working with adults, at some point, we're going to do all three. And I would suggest going over each checklist and taking that self-assessment, because the set of skills not the same. Some of them are changeable, that go through all three, but not always. And so sometimes you may have to pivot in a different way, plan in a different way, depending on your learning modalities. So don't think that everything you do in one is just going to naturally flow in the same way with the other one. So really be mindful of what's included in those checklists. And so when you're planning, I would suggest going back to those checklists and then making sure, okay, am I really planning for this? Am I doing this? No, what is it going to look like when I'm in that personal space, whether it's physically or as we are today virtually? So that's the part about the three learning modalities. Dania?
So I'm just going to close us out with really thinking about teaching and learning when it comes to andragogy, right? That often we don't like the sit and get and being kind of spoken to, but we also got to consider our various levels of learners, right? And that sometimes they need the information ahead of time in order to apply it, right? So we want to think about if we're using all three learning modalities, be it training, facilitating, or presenting, we want to make sure our professional learning always includes the following three items. We have some type of opening, right? Think about the agenda and the outcome. Provide the reason why, okay? Think about that colleague connection. Are we providing time for adults to take risk and feel comfortable? And then also, are we providing a getting centered, providing a hook that aligns to the content? And then think about how do you want to chunk that content? Even though we're working with adults, they still want a sequential order to the learning. So think about what that looks like. Be very intentional and purposeful during your planning and implementation of the sequential order for the adult learner. And then we want to have a closing. What is your reflection? What is your feedback? Think about initial feedback. that you would like to collect, and then your next steps and your follow-up, especially for the use of that application, right, for the adult learner as well. So we're going to show you a quick example. Clear and cloudy, something really quick. You can change this to be as tech savvy as you want with Wixie. You can make it a Jamboard. You can make it do so many things. If you are in person and you want to use Post-its and because you're running out of time, you can do a QR code, all types of things. What's clear about what you've learned, what's cloudy, what questions are swirling around, right? Something really quick and easy that doesn't take a lot of time, and you can use this and with different types of applications, okay? So as we are ending our session, we really do thank you for your time. When we talk about andragogy, we really want to think about the adult learner and approach it very differently than children, okay? So if nothing else, we really hope you take away from that. We appreciate your time. Carrie, we are done talking. Thank you guys so much for having us.
Thank you guys. We really appreciate you joining us today. Really, I think a lot that our e-coaches can get out of this, especially as we go through and we do, and their roles change so often between facilitating, training, working one-on-one. It's always good to have those things in hand. So thank you both. We greatly appreciate it. With that, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone here with us today, we have 5 minutes before the first session starts. So go ahead, get out of this session, and we will see you in the first round, and hopefully we'll see you throughout the day. We will be meeting back at the end for a quick wrap up and closing at the very end of the day. So we'll see everyone, our large group, back together then. Have a good one and enjoy. Oh, attendance form. Thank you, Hope. Yes, there is an attendance form. Let me drop that one in the chat. I do apologize on that one. Give me one quick second. Let me copy that link. There we go. My apologies. There is the attendance links. There you go. Go ahead and do that real quick. I'll take you just a moment, and we'll see you in those first sessions.